As the spaceship's doors hissed open, Glicks, the rookie alien bounty hunter, scanned the chaotic crowd for his mark. Suddenly, a voice boomed through the din. "Hey, you with the antennae! Ever been part of a fire-eating act?" Before Glicks could react, a cheeky human in a sparkly top hat dragged him on stage, thrusting a juggling pin into his hands. The crowd erupted in laughter as Glicks stood, utterly bewildered, his mission forgotten in the spectacle. In the quaint town square of Little Springs, the night air was thick with the smell of popcorn and the buzz of excitement. Bob, clad in a sequined coat and a top hat slightly too large for his head, was midway through his fire-eating act, drawing off from the gathered Earth crowd. Unbeknownst to them, tonight's performance was being watched by more than just the locals. Perched atop a nearby building with a high-tech scanner in hand, Glicks, a rookie alien bounty hunter, was on the hunt for Daler of the Seven Sons, a fugitive with a hefty bounty. The scanner beeped erratically, mistaking the bursts of fire from Bob's act for the energy signatures it was programmed to detect. Finally, Glicks muttered to himself, his 4 eyes narrowing in focus. "Time to nab a criminal and prove I'm not just a new squid in the ship." Glicks activated his cloaking device and descended amidst the shadows, moving stealthily towards the stage. Bob, completely engrossed in his performance, tossed a fire stick high into the air, catching it with a flourish as he noticed a figure approaching him. Assuming it was part of the act a surprise guest the event organizers forgot to mention, Bob flashed his showman's grin. "Ah, what do we have here? A volunteer from the stars? Ladies and gentlemen, give a big hand to my mysterious assistant," Bob announced, gesturing grandly towards Glicks. The crowd erupted into applause, unaware of the true intent behind Glicks's presence. Glicks, momentarily stunned by the unexpected welcome, hesitated. His training hadn't covered being part of an Earthling's entertainment routine. "Now, kind sir, assist me with the grand finale." "Hold this, just like that," Bob said, handing Glicks a fire stick, completely oblivious to Glicks's confusion. His usual bravado faltering under the alien's bewildered gaze. Glicks, his mission protocols clashing with the need to maintain cover, took the fire stick awkwardly. "You are not who I am supposed to retrieve," he whispered out of the corner of his mouth. "Speak up, my extraterrestrial friend. The crowd loves a good dialogue." Bob chuckled, patting Glicks on the back as he played to the audience. Deciding it was now or never, Glicks grabbed Bob with his free tentacle, activating his teleportation device. "Wrong target or not, you're coming with me," he declared, albeit with less confidence than intended. In a flash of light and a puff of smoke, both Glicks and Bob vanished from the stage, leaving behind a crowd stunned into silence, followed by an uproar of bewildered applause. They reappeared aboard Glicks's ship, the small confines a stark contrast to the open night air of Little Springs. Bob, still holding the fire stick, looked around, his initial shock turning into amusement. "Well, this isn't the after party I expected, but what a splendid twist. So, what's next? A tour of your spaceship?" Glicks, realizing the mess he'd inadvertently created, sighed deeply. No tour. You're not the fugitive I need, but now you're the fugitive I'm stuck with." As the ship hummed to life, setting a course back to Xyler, Bob's laughter echoed through the hull, mixing with Glicks's groans. The adventure was just beginning, and it was bound to be anything but ordinary. Bob's initial amusement at being whisked away to space began to wane as the real implications of his adventure dawned on him. Meanwhile, Glicks was desperately trying to contact his superiors to explain the mix-up, but all he got was the bureaucratic runaround. "Let me get this straight," Bob said, twirling the fire stick absent-mindedly as he floated slightly above the deck of Glicks's ship due to the unfamiliar gravity settings. "You've kidnapped me because your gizmo went haywire, and now we're hurtling through space because you've got the wrong guy." Glicks, fiddling with the communication panel, grunted in frustration. It was supposed to be a straightforward mission: find Daler, bring him in, prove I'm not a failure. Now I have an Earthling circus performer on board who can't stay put. Bob chuckled, bouncing slightly as he pushed off the walls of the spacecraft. Well, considering your day's going about as well as my last blind date, how about you drop me back home and we call it even? Not possible, Glicks replied dryly, his eyes still on the panel. We're already halfway to the Xyler hub. No turning back now. Seeing an opportunity in his unexpected trip, Bob's eyes lit up with mischief. All right, if I'm stuck here, I might as well enjoy the ride. What's the entertainment on board this floating tin can? As Bob made himself at home, Glicks received a curt message from his command, instructing him to keep the humans secure until further notice. With a sigh, Glicks resigned himself to his new role as an unwilling host. Bob, meanwhile, discovered the intercom system and decided it was the perfect tool for his impromptu comedy routines. Attention, all 0 passengers and 1 very cranky crew member, Bob's voice echoed through the ship. If anyone's seen my sanity, I believe it jumped ship at the last starport. Reward for its return. Glicks rubbed his temples as he tried to shut down the intercom. That's enough, Bob. This isn't a circus, it's a high-tech bounty hunter ship. Could have fooled me, Bob retorted, flipping through a manual labeled Galactic Navigation for Dummies. Your tech seems to have a mind of its own. To Glicks's chagrin, Bob's antics became a hit when they stopped for supplies at a multi-species trading station. As Glicks tried to conduct business, Bob pulled together an impromptu juggling act with anti-gravity orbs, drawing a crowd of amused onlookers. See, Glicks, you need to lighten up. We Earthlings know how to turn a bad situation into a party, Bob said, tossing an orb high enough that it almost floated away before swooping back into his hand. Great, you're turning my mission into a circus, Glicks muttered, but the trader gave them a good deal on supplies, charmed by Bob's performance. As they left the station, Bob leaned over to Glicks. Admit it, my extraterrestrial friend, life's more fun with a bit of Earth flair. Glicks, watching Bob's latest fans wave them off, couldn't help but crack a small smile. Maybe there's something to your human madness after all. As the unlikely duo continued their unexpected journey, news of Bob's delightful performances at various spaceports began to spread like wildfire across the galaxy. What had started as an accidental kidnapping was quickly turning into a cosmic sensation, with Bob now billed as the Earthling who conquered the stars. Back aboard the ship, Glicks found himself fielding communications from entertainment promoters across multiple systems, all eager to host Bob's next show. I signed up to be a bounty hunter, not a talent agent, Glicks grumbled as he sifted through the digital pile of inquiries and contracts. Bob, meanwhile, was having the time of his life. Think of it, Glicks. We're like pioneers, introducing the art of human performance to the universe, he exclaimed, practicing his juggling with some newly acquired alien fruits that hovered slightly above his hands before dropping back, thanks to the ship's adjusted gravity fields. More like introducing chaos, Glicks muttered, secretly amused by Bob's unabated enthusiasm. However, he couldn't deny the benefits. Their once sparse supply funds were now overflowing thanks to Bob's growing legion of fans. Their next stop was the renowned floating Coliseum of Vortaxis, where Bob was scheduled to perform his biggest show yet. The Coliseum, a massive structure orbiting a pulsar, drew spectators from across the sector. Bob's name in glowing lights floated above the entrance, an advertisement large enough to be seen from space. Look at that, Glicks! I'm famous! Bob laughed, his face alight with excitement as they approached. Glicks had to admit, the sight was impressive even if it was all accidental. Just remember, don't get too carried away. We're here to entertain, not start a cult, he warned, half joking. The show was a resounding success. Bob's repertoire had grown to include not only juggling and fire eating but also a spectacular zero-gravity trapeze act that left the audience in awe. His final act, a daring escape from a simulated black hole, brought the crowd to their feet in thunderous applause. After the show, as Bob signed autographs and posed for holograms with his fans, Glicks watched from the sidelines. It was hard to believe this all started with a faulty scanner. Maybe, he thought, there was something to this new career path after all. Hey, Glicks, come join us, Bob called, pulling him into a photo with a group of alien children who were giggling at their floating hair under the reduced gravity. Glicks smiled, a genuine smile, as the flashes went off. Maybe being a manager isn't so bad, he conceded. As they made their way back to the ship, Glix's communicator buzzed. It was a message from the Galactic Council, not a summons for Bob's extradition as he feared, but an invitation. They wanted Bob to perform at the Council's annual Gala, an event broadcasted across the entire galaxy. Looks like you're not just a star, Bob. You're about to be a legend, Glicks told him, clapping him on the back as they boarded their ship, set for their next adventure. Bob just winked. Stick with me, kid. I'll show you the universe like you've never seen it before. And as the stars passed by, Glicks realized that with Bob, every day was a new surprise, and maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't have it any other way. As the Stardust cruiser hummed through the cosmos, en route to the Galactic Council's headquarters for the annual gala, Bob's anticipation grew, matched only by Glix's apprehension. The gala was not just another performance, it was broadcasted live across countless systems, and the audience would include the most influential beings in the galaxy. Bob spent his days rehearsing in the cruiser's makeshift stage area, refining his acts with some new twists. I'm thinking, what about adding some actual stardust? Could give the finale a real bang, Bob suggested with a twinkle in his eye. Glicks, meanwhile, was buried in communications with the gala organizers, ensuring everything would be perfect. Just stick to the act, Bob. No improvising this time. We can't afford any mishaps, Glicks replied, his tone more serious than usual. As they docked at the council's grand station, they were greeted by a flurry of organizers and dignitaries, each more eager than the last to meet the famous Earth performer. Bob soaked in the attention, his natural charm winning over even the most reserved of alien officials. Welcome, Bob of Earth. We are thrilled to host you, intoned a council elder, her voice echoing slightly through the translator device. Your performances have sparked much joy throughout the galaxy. Bob grinned, bowing theatrically. Thank you, madam. I aim to please, and occasionally dazzle. The night of the gala arrived quicker than Glicks would have liked. As the audience filled the vast auditorium, a sea of different species from across the universe, the air buzzed with excitement. Backstage, Bob was in his element, but even he felt a flutter of nerves. Big crowd tonight, eh? He joked to Glicks, who was double-checking the equipment. Just remember, everyone's here to have a good time. Keep it light, keep it fun, Glicks advised, giving Bob a rare, encouraging smile. The show began with Bob's signature entrance, rocketing onto the stage in a burst of colorful smoke and light, instantly capturing the crowd's attention. His acts were flawless, from juggling anti-gravity orbs that seemed to dance on their own to his daring fire-eating display that now included holographic flames interplaying with the real ones. However, just as Bob prepared for his grand finale, the unexpected happened. The stage lights flickered and dimmed, a technical glitch that plunged the auditorium into semi-darkness. Without missing a beat, Bob seized the moment, his voice booming through the darkness. Looks like we've got a bit of cosmic interference, folks. But the show must go on. Using only a spotlight operated by Glicks, Bob turned the mishap into part of his act, his shadow dancing dramatically on the walls of the auditorium as he continued. The audience, far from being disappointed, was delighted by his quick thinking and adaptability. When the lights finally returned, Bob concluded with a spectacular display of fireworks and stardust, leaving the audience in awe. The applause was thunderous, resonating throughout the station. As the cheers died down, Bob took a bow, and Glicks joined him on stage, sharing in the ovation. You were right, Bob, Glicks whispered as they walked off stage. The show must go on, and it did. Bob laughed, slinging an arm around Glicks's shoulders. What did I tell you? With a bit of human creativity, anything's possible. The aftermath of Bob's triumphant performance at the Galactic Council Gala was more profound than either he or Glicks could have anticipated. As the curtain fell and the last echoes of applause died down, the duo found themselves surrounded by a throng of enthusiastic fans and grateful dignitaries, all eager to express their admiration. "Bob, you've done more than entertain, you've inspired," one of the council members, a distinguished figure with shimmering scales, enthused as she shook Bob's hand vigorously. "Your performance transcended cultural boundaries and brought us together in a way I haven't seen during my tenure." Bob, ever the showman, flashed a broad grin and replied with a wink, "Well, I always say laughter is the best universal translator." Meanwhile, Glicks was approached by several of his superiors, who had watched the event with a mix of astonishment and pride. "Glicks, you've managed this situation with unexpected flair. Consider your mission status not only redeemed but celebrated," one of the senior hunters announced, clapping him on the back with a hearty laugh. Flushed with success, Glicks could only nod, his earlier worries forgotten in the light of their achievements. "Thank you, sir. It seems there was more to learn from Bob than I ever expected." As the crowd began to disperse, Bob and Glicks retreated to a quieter corner of the backstage area, where they could finally catch a moment to themselves. The adrenaline of the night was wearing off, replaced by a reflective tranquility. "You know, Glicks, when you first dragged me into this adventure, I thought it was just going to be a fun anecdote for my memoirs," Bob said, his voice tinged with sincerity beneath his usual jovial tone. "But it turned out to be one of the grandest chapters of my life." Glicks looked at Bob, realizing how much their unexpected partnership had changed him. "And to think I was trying to get rid of you at first," he admitted with a chuckle. "I guess the universe had other plans for us." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the Galactic Council's chief ambassador, who extended an invitation that would once again shift their trajectory. "Bob, Glicks, your ability to connect with audiences across species and planets is remarkable. We'd like to offer you both positions as cultural ambassadors. What do you say? Ready to help bridge the stars with humor and unity?" Bob's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Spreading joy throughout the galaxy? Count me in." Glicks took a moment longer, the weight of the decision clear on his face. Finally, he nodded, a firm resolve settling over him. "It seems my hunting days are over. I'm in too." And so, Bob and Glicks embarked on a new journey together, traveling from one star system to another, not as hunter and quarry, but as partners in a grand endeavor to foster interstellar goodwill and laughter. Their shows became legendary, each performance weaving new threads into the fabric of galactic harmony. As they stood side by side, watching a sunset on a distant world, Glicks turned to Bob. "You know, for a human, you're pretty cosmic." Bob laughed, slapping Glicks lightly on the shoulder. "And for an alien, you're not too out of this world yourself, buddy."